Welcome back to Mad's Monday morning podcast that paradoxically airs at the nighttime. And this week we have basedbuddha from the Discord. Listen to the podcast and leave them alone. All right. So, how are you tonight anyway?
Uh, well, that's the question. How am I? It's always a loaded question. Maybe it is a loaded question, or maybe I tend to talk out of my ass with every single question that I'm asked.
That's kind of based. You can't be pinned down that way.
So I don't like that connotation of that.
Well, you know what I
Can't
mean.
be
It's like
pinned down.
it's like
I mean, that sounds mysterious. Like I have something to hide. I don't have anything to hide.
well, it's
I
like
wanted a running joke. I can't. I have. Yeah. Oh my god.
it's like the Joker in The Dark Knight with the multiple backstories.
You wouldn't get it.
You can't be defined.
Can't be defined. I don't know about that. I think that's something that I would like to believe because it makes me unique and special. But I know that right now, at least I'm very hard to understand for many, many, many people.
Yeah.
Especially because I openly flaunt the usage of, labels to describe people, places, things, and, whatever. Yes, I do think we should cancel language.
Mm-hmm.
You wanted me to keep going. Okay, cool.
Continue. Feel free.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's especially difficult, paradoxical to define yourself if you do not want to be defined. I guess in a sense, yeah, I am. I guess I am kind of the way that you were describing before. Unfortunately,
I think the word would be enigmatic. I think it's the word we're looking for.
that I wouldn't. Yeah, I'm not comfortable with that either.
Oh.
Enigmatic. that has certain connotations to it. Not even negative ones, but ones that I don't even feel match up to me. I don't match up to them. Enigmatic. That would be something like the mind of Johann Sebastian Bach, or Chopin, or people who, I mean, we treat them like gods. Obviously, they're not, but they have a kind of knowledge and a kind of specialty that I don't think is easy to find, and that's obviously why we put them on pedestals and elevate them and call them geniuses. That's what I think of when I think of the term enigmatic.
Okay. So you don't consider yourself to be a genius?
Absolutely not. I go out of my way to convey to people that I'm probably strictly one of the most normal people in existence.
And yet they have trouble understanding you.
I think that's because I remind a lot of people of things they don't like about themselves.
That is probably a very good point.
I cut into conversations. I cut into conversations. I use kind of cryptic language at times.
Yeah, same.
I'm not too, well, I mean, I can be, but I'm not too friendly. I'm not too sociable. All of these things where the general kind of absorbed feeling people get from me is I'm not enough in a lot of aspects for the kind of societies that I exist in. Or at least that's the way I've come to feel it. And I'm sure that that's going to be taken out of context, but by whom and for what reason, I don't know.
Well, we do have these sort of standards, don't we, that are societally set of like adequacy versus inadequacy for certain certain functions in society, and like madness versus stability, insanity, these sort of constructed binary distinctions that really are just obscuring a wider field of multiplicity and possibility. I'm sure you would agree.
They're obscuring not a sense of the whole, like the totality, not necessarily obscuring that. I mean, that's inevitable with something as limiting as language, I think. And but what I do think it's doing is, well, again, it's doing exactly what language was designed to do. It's breaking these things down and simplifying them to such an extent that they become unrecognizable of what they were before. And we lose a lot of the nuance and the detail that otherwise would have been there, had we not had something so destructive, simplifying, and ignorant as language.
Right. I agree. Yeah, that makes sense. Communication is sort of inherently flawed in that sense.
Yeah, and it always will be. Communication is something that is absolutely imperfect. There's a train passing by. Please wait.
I can't hear it.
Oh, okay. Communication is something that is... can you hear it now?
Yeah, well, I can only hear it when you talk.
There we go. So you can't hear it now?
No.
Well, like while I was talking. So, anyways, the engine passed. It should be fine now. I completely forget what I was saying. That's going to happen a lot. I have very, very short memory.
I don't honestly.
Oh, yeah. Communication.
Okay, right.
Communication is you're saying that it's flawed, and the way the sentence is constructed there implies that it only has a couple of minor flaws. But communication in and of itself is flawed entirely, because there's no way you'll ever be able to communicate the entirety of a piece of information with language alone, or even with other forms of media. If you have pictures and words but not sound, you're missing an aspect. If you have pictures, word, and sound but not perhaps smell or dynamic or any of these things, any aspect that goes missing is crucial for us to grasp and to comprehend what's actually in front of us, what's being presented to us. There's no way to flawlessly communicate.
I think this also has to do with like the interaction between the perception of like someone who's hearing or reading something and the intention or even the style of conveying the thing that the person who is talking or writing is using.
I don't even think it's about method or style. I think it's inherent.
But
I mean, think about
I
think
think
about a phenomenon like photo compression on computers. Obviously, how it works is to compress the file into a smaller and smaller and smaller file size. You cut out quote unquote extraneous detail, but detail that nonetheless is still important to gathering the whole picture. There comes a point when the picture becomes so obscured by the amount of compression that it's unrecognizable. And that doesn't really start any certain place, but each time it happens, it just grows and grows and grows, and each time you miss more and more important detail.
right. I see what you're saying. Like there's always something that is missing from the whole picture that is sort of left out. But I also like I think it's both things, because you also have like a communication is also like an interaction between a perception and an expression also.
I would say less a perception and expression, and more perceptor and expressor.
Right.
Because, it's kind of, I mean, a bit of a misuse of the term, I suppose, but it's kind of objectifying the things when really they could be an object, or whatever we consider a sentient thing to be. Seems like a moot point.
I would consider them subjects, because that's because all of the interpretation is subjective.
Yeah, this topic was brought up to me by a friend that I've been talking to for a long time. They're like some kind of really techie kind of person. I don't really know what they do because
STEM Lord.
No, God, no, they hate STEM. But they're pretty tech involved, and I suppose, and that was one of the analogies that they first kind of expressed to me, was this idea of photo compression and the imperfection of communication itself, not even via method, but just inherently.
Right, yeah, it's very interesting.
It's saddening, I think, that you can never truly know something or someone.
I don't know, like I think that also depends on how you mean by truly. Because I do believe in connection. Like I do believe that there can be like this is kind of what I mean when I talk about recognition in love, and how like if put under the interpretation, like the force of love and being recognized in that way, I feel like that's how one can be perceived in the way that they are, in a sense. In an ideal
perceived
situation.
In the way they are. Tell me about that.
Like what you're expressing is the same. It has the same quality as what the other is perceiving. They recognize you for you.
But is that possible? In any real, meaningful way?
I believe I've experienced this, to as much of the extent that it is linguistically possible.
How so?
Well, like, I've been in love before. Like, I don't know how to explain it any better. Like, it's kind of on the fly right now.
We'll do it on the fly.
Well, like, for example, like, it's partly a matter of someone telling you are something, and you being like, yes, I am that thing. Like that on that level of connection.
They're telling you that you are something. Not something to them, not something as they perceive, but something, period?
Well, at the end of the day, I think we could argue that every single time someone says that, it's just a perception, right?
Well, no, it's not just a perception, because it's both a perception, and it goes further than that. It's a perception and a prescription. It's both.
Right, yeah. Good point. This is very Derridian.
Do you think it is more?
Well, I would also say it's a force of interpretation, if you know what I mean by that. But I don't know if you've read... I suppose
it's a more clunky way to put it as, understanding.
Sure, yeah. It's like finally the force that interprets you understands. Exactly.
Mm. And in terms of understanding, your way of expressing it before was, again, someone prescribing.
But
And at
it's
the
almost
same
like a
time,
sense of
more on a
it's almost
on
like
the
a
same
sense of
time,
like, oh
more of
shit.
like a surface level kind of thing. Um, they're prescribing, but above that is that they are perceiving, right? Perceiving and prescribing. But which is it more? When you finally understand something, are you projecting understanding onto it, or have you internalized the understanding of the thing?
I think in this situation, it would be the latter. Because what I'm about to say is like they're perceiving and prescribing something as it is already.
Is
Which
that's a prescriptive statement in and of itself.
which if we go into more detail, I guess, and describe it in a more precise way, as it is being expressed and intended. And as it is being experienced by the one that they are perceiving and prescribing to.
Well, then let me throw a Zizek curveball at you. If someone absorbs a different message than is intended, the intent doesn't really matter, does it?
Well, to what extent?
What's that?
I would argue to some extent it remains important.
Intent
Yeah.
versus material outcome?
Yeah.
I think in a sense, yes, it is. It's a factor, but it's not the overpowering one. It's an ingredient in this cocktail here, but it's not. It's a mild flavor. Underneath, it's subverted by other things, primarily material outcome.
Yeah, and the way that flow can get redirected by so many different mechanisms of social interactions as well.
Like, for example, let's say you're having awful, terrible, no good, that's the title, right? Very bad, terrible, no good, rotten. Doesn't fucking matter. Really awful day, and this dude, in some way, is somehow, he manages to trip over his shoelaces and punch you in the fucking face. If you've had a terrible day, would it really matter to you if the dude just fucking punched you in the face?
Right, you would be having this explosive
You
reaction.
would be livid.
Yeah.
You'd be livid.
Even though he didn't
and you
mean
would
to.
Probably deck the guy.
Right.
I mean, certain people, I'm not saying this is across the board. People are different because they have different material conditions, of course.
Well, yeah, and I also feel like the sizes of the people would matter in this case. Like, if some, like, huge brawny dude, like, punched a little kid, they probably wouldn't be able to deck him back.
I mean, maybe they're, like a black belt in Taekwondo or some shit. I don't fucking know. That's kind of the thing, that I've been focusing on lately is I don't fucking know. like a kind of study of ignorance itself.
Oh, yeah?
Because, to connect back to our earlier topic, because you can't really understand something, because meaning is always lost via, practical means, via machinic means, or via means of narrative. Because you can't understand something, there's always going to be a degree of ignorance. Right? And so, is my phone still on?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Okay, I was like, yeah, it was like complete silence. I thought I was just dead.
No, I'm just listening.
So you can't know many things at all, really. Like obviously, as Descartes was pointing out, not my favorite dude, but at least in this aspect, he does. He's right about something. I'm just kidding. Something. Kidding. No, I'm not really. I have my perception of him, but I haven't really read his works. I'm getting off track. But the thing I've been thinking is, if you don't know something, for any number of reasons, but for all intents and purposes here, because you can't know something, again, for any reason, I feel like that excuses you from any material harm that you do. It's a question again of intent versus material outcome. In this instance, you wouldn't yell at a child or fucking break a board over their head for not understanding complex calculus theorems, because why would they be familiar with that, right? In the same vein, why is it okay to shame someone, perhaps, for just for an example, why is it okay to shame someone for violating a social convention? Shaming, by the way, can be anything from, very mildly telling them off to physical assault, spectrum. It's okay to not do it. It's okay to do it to an adult, even if they're, limited in some aspect in comprehending the social aura, but it's not okay to do it to a child. Even if, again, that, adult, whatever, nebulous term that's supposed to be, even if they're not capable or, somehow just don't understand that social convention, it's considered okay. And why exactly? Why do you think? Oh, wow, that's awful.
Well, I think part of that is because of how we treat kids like they have no agency, right? Isn't that part of that?
It's a part, but I don't think it's
Whereas with
the
adults,
major
we're
part.
so fucking ready to put people in the box of criminality and inherent evil. We're so ready to do that.
Because the key factor here is, the proverbial "you should know better."
Right.
There's an aspect here of implied responsibility,
Yeah.
which
you're
criminal.
abdicating, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, you're talking about, throwing adults into the bin of criminality. This is criminal. This is not okay. This is alienating. It's soul crushing. Destroys people's lives. And, even, on the surface, if it's something that's small, if there's only one thing we can absorb from the Joker, it only takes one bad day to break someone.
I don't know if that's the most important message from the Joker, but I see
the message I got
your
from
point.
that was the message I got from it, and what I'm advocating for is, I mean, it's been talked about before. I'm advocating either for a society of vulnerability versus a society of strength, or no society at all.
Yeah.
Because what we've rather seen with societies that we've developed is they tend usually to steer towards the path of societies of strength, which is, I mean, I'm sure we're on the same page here, that it's, as the kids say, not hogger. Why did I say
It's
that?
cringe.
Oh, God, no.
It's unbased.
It is not cool. I'm 35 years. No, I'm kidding. I've been talking for way too long now. Tell me about what
You took us on a ride.
Well, did I?
I never really thought of it in that way before.
In what way?
Because from your perspective here, we're constantly always incapable of truly coming to understandings. We shouldn't really blame people for their social transgressions, because I see it more in the lens of like being against ressentiment and the pious mode of being, of seeing existence and human beings as inherently at fault for what we view as transgressions on society. You know what I mean? That's where I see the theoretical error. You see it in a more linguistic way, I think.
I see it in many ways. Not just linguistic. It goes back to before how I am. I know the word nebulous. I am very nebulous. I'm hard to define. In an elusive sense, almost, but not really.
Yeah.
I don't want to use that word because that makes me sound like I'm enigmatic, which I'm not okay with that either, obviously.
Okay.
But I don't just think about it from a linguistic perspective. I think about it from a me perspective.
Mm-hmm.
That's really what this is I'm thinking about this from my perspective, the ways that I've come to know the world, and the ways that I've come to know the world are, well, they're through ways of pain,
Yeah.
And I think that that's not necessarily unique, absolutely not something unique. It is to be expected, I think, because at least the way things are right now, I'm pretty much on the same page with Siddhartha Gautama, base Buddha. That's there you go. I'm pretty much on the same page as Siddhartha Gautama as saying all life is suffering. That's the first. That's the first noble truth that he posits, is that all life is suffering. And usually, I take a different perspective. I use a different word. I don't say life. I distinguish between existence and life. I say that all existence is suffering, because existence, oh my God, is certainly hellfire. But life, necessarily, it has more of a positive kind of vibe to it, kind of a nice, airy, breezy feeling to it of, like you say, I want to have a good life. I want to live. I want to live my best life, right? Yeah, all the same words there to express an existence which is not all painful. Which is not all painful. And in that sense, I feel like that's part of the reason why, because it's rather utopian. I feel like that's the reason, one of the reasons why, when we think about those kinds of things, the images that come up are so idyllic. They're so peaceful. They're so calm. Because you're talking about an existence without pain, a utopia on the individual level.
Well, there's a couple of different ways I go with this. If you can let me get into it a little bit.
I'm sorry, let you? It's your podcast.
Well, I just mean give me the time to elaborate. So,
no, you're out of time. I'm kicking you off your own show.
So either what we mean here is two different modes of experiencing existence itself and viewing existence itself, or life itself is a mode of existing within existence.
It's neither.
Let me explain what I'm.
Your perspective. I'm sorry.
Well, let me explain what I mean by this, because this is what you describe here is sort of like anti-Nietzschean, to be honest, because like Deleuze explains in Nietzschean philosophy that this is also like back to the pious mode of being versus the tragic mode of being. It's basically like he explains how the Greeks had a notion in their religion that existence itself was inherently flawed. And this was the Titanic notion of crime, basically. But what they did with their polytheism was they basically decided that whenever somebody went mad or whenever somebody went like quote unquote bad in society, they just blamed it on the gods. They said that this person was possessed by a god. They didn't blame it on the actual individual itself, but in this way they're still blaming existence as inherently bad. But then when the Christian society came along with their monotheistic God, it shifted from Titanic crime to Christian sin, so that not only is existence inherently flawed, it's also blameful for this flaw. And that's where like Catholic guilt comes from, and like Jewish guilt and all of that. And basically it's this cultural view that developed through history. It's not natural. It's a socio-cultural constructed view that existence itself is blameful for its own negativity and therefore worthy of punishment. So the pious mode of existence is basically that mode that is punitive and accusatory and blameful of other people for their quote-unquote crimes and sins simply by their own existence, which leads people to be treated that way into like prisons and things like that. But the tragic mode of existence, if I'm not going too fast, is basically the way that Dionysus, as described by Nietzsche, affirms all existence and all pain, not by internalizing it the way that Christ does, but by affirming it in its exteriority. So that actually, for Dionysus, like, existence itself is so holy that it actually necessitates a higher level of suffering that should then be affirmed instead of, like, blamed. So basically, it's a shift from thinking that existence itself existence itself necessitates suffering to thinking that suffering like validates existence. And so it's basically it's almost a masochism, but it's also like a very anti-punitive way of viewing other people as well.
That's a good way to that's a perfect way to describe it, actually, because you're talking about a point of view here that is, it's blaming existence, but it is firmly in the camp of opposing punishment and opposing blame on the person themselves. I mean, like, it most of what I believe can be boiled down to simple axioms, or not axioms, like figures of speech, rules of thumb. And in this aspect, you can, the figure of speech that you can use. I didn't fucking choose to be born.
Right, exactly.
I didn't choose this.
Exactly.
So how can I be blamed, for the pain that it incurs? It doesn't make sense. It doesn't follow.
Right. That's kind of the point, is like people aren't inherently bad just because they exist. And this is why...
Which, incidentally, is also why I reject the notion of reincarnation, at least, in the, Hinduistic kind of aspect. Because it implies, yes, it does imply that existence is pain, but in the same aspect as you were saying before, there is the aspect of karma, which is, you do bad shit, you get to keep living. Good for fucking you. You get to keep on living, and that's your punishment. There isn't there are hell worlds. Yeah, I think I may be wrong. But in this aspect, what it's conveying to you is you're gonna keep fucking up until you finally do everything right. Obviously, it plugs into the just world, fallacy as well. But the message there is ultimately you're gonna keep fucking up, and you're gonna keep being reincarnated. You're gonna keep going around this merry-go-round, until until you're eternal soul decides to, get the message that, maybe I shouldn't do things that are construed as bad by society.
I still feel as though you're like, it's not to be like, I don't know, like some kind of edgelord or something, but it does seem like it all comes back somehow to cucking yourself to society, though. When that's not really like the Deleuzian point. The point is more of like, it's more of like a freedom from that.
You keep bringing up the names of philosophers here, and
Because
no,
I get
I'm,
this
I'm
from
absolutely
books.
I'm absolutely not saying that, my ideas exist in a vacuum, but I don't really go out of my way to read books.
Right,
I
yeah.
really don't. Like, I wear it on my sleeve. I'm fucking lazy. I don't want to read dry ass, boring ass books. Like, I mean, the ideas themselves, that's what I'm interested in. That's what I'm interested in.
Yeah, and
And
in our
if
age,
someone
you
wants to
can
go
get
out of their
them
way,
from the
if someone
internet.
wants to go out of their way to explain the ideas, I'll listen. I'll absolutely listen. But I'm not going to sit down and fucking read the book.
Right,
Is
yeah.
that selfish? Yeah, I think it is. But that doesn't really matter to me. Because I'm talking about, expanding a field of knowledge here. At least, my field of knowledge.
Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about here. Because if you can explain the idea well enough that it resonates, well enough that it clicks and makes sense, there's beauty in that.
Yeah, it creates an expansion.
But then, of course, you run into the problem, more equals better in terms of, philosophy and knowledge. That is, to be this annoying cunt that's always questioning everything. Oh, is that really the case? I don't know. Let's talk about it. But I mean, is that a good thing? Is that a bad? I don't know. I want to. All I want to do is roll up into this big boy philosophy school. Get integrated in there, make him think I'm all cool with them, and then just drop a fucking bomb and leave.
Like literally, or what do you mean?
No, not literally. No, attention, all feds. I'm a loving American citizen.
Okay.
What?
All right.
Did you get your clip?
Did I get my? Oh yeah, we're definitely clipping that part, but. But God, what was I gonna say? I don't find reading philosophy to be boring. I love it. Honestly, me personally, I love it.
No, I mean, you're talking about you. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, it just suits me.
Yeah, for me, I've been extra clear here. It's not about reading the book. It's about the ideas.
Right.
If a person can put their ideas a certain way, or if they can communicate them well enough, like in a philosophy book, if the writer is talking about their ideas in an easily understandable way, in a charismatic way, I think that matters especially. Um, then that, I think, that's awesome. I love it when I can pick up a book and feel like I'm having a conversation with someone, because usually I can't sit down and focus for that. Unless I feel like I'm really talking to someone, right? Because the thing I notice in philosophy, and one of the bigger reasons why I want to walk into that big boy philosophy school with my metaphorical bomb, is there's this cult of rationality,
Yeah.
and this cult of logic, and trying to make sure that your point is the one that wins, and it's a fucking it's a hand job contest.
Totally.
I can't stand it.
I
It's
totally
it's
agree.
people trying to duke out ideas with each other, and and just consistently, just chit chat all fucking day long about what they think, the best idea here is. But then that just leads to people getting trampled over.
Yeah.
And that's not fun. That's not fair.
And that has
I
a
mean,
tendency to.
I mean, it's fun if you're the one trampling. I mean, Schadenfreude is a force to be reckoned with. But
It has a tendency to almost dilute the ideas themselves into just little logically consistent quips that you bludgeon each other over the head with, instead of
like sound bites.
Yeah, instead of like interesting,
politics, yeah.
deep, expanding, conceptual creation, which is what philosophy is kind of supposed to be, or like actually is in reality in some way.
Right. Ooh, low battery, 10%. Let's see, 46 minutes. That's enough material for you, right?
Well, I want to go longer because we're rolling here. Like,
yeah, but my phone says no. We could do like you could we could like pause right here, come back, and then we'll like once I get home and stuff.
you want to?
That could work.
All right, we will take a break then.
Okay.
Let me know when you're back and ready.
Yeah, man. Yeah, man.